Hey guys, Pastor Sean coming to you with today's daily devotion. We're in John chapter 14 and verse 2. We're going to move all the way up to verse 2 tonight. So John chapter 14 verse 2, and it says, "In my Father's house are many mansions, semicolon. If it were not so, I would have told you, period. I go to prepare a place for you." Let's talk about this to start with. Jesus says, "In my Father's house are many mansions." Can you imagine the glorious state of heaven if the homes there are just called mansions? They're called mansions. They are what would be considered royalty up and down the streets of gold. And Jesus, who is the master of the universe, looks at his disciples and says, "In my Father's house are many mansions." Not just a regular dwelling place, but many mansions. He says this because he wants his disciples to understand the difference between this life and the next. In this life, they struggle. They're in poverty. They are very, very poor men. They're working class men who own businesses. They own their fishing business. They're fishermen. There's a tax collector in the group. There's all sorts of different activities going on as far as the working class goes, just among his disciples. But the people of Israel were an oppressed people. They were slaves to the Roman Empire, and they were an oppressed people. And they lived hand to mouth. They had homes, and they had gardens and farms and animals and different things of that nature like a working class society would have. But they were pretty much poverty stricken. So when Jesus lays this out for them, it's amazing to them. And his rationale here is to show them the difference between this life and the afterlife. In my Father's house are many mansions. If it were not so, I would have told you. He's saying if God was broke, I'd have let you know. But he's not. He owns the cattle of 1,000 hills. He said, "The silver is mine, the gold is mine." He tells us, he says, "Man, if I was hungry, I wouldn't tell you." Why? Because I own everything. It all belongs to me. So God is not a poverty-stricken God, but his people who are here in Israel at the time in Jerusalem certainly are poverty-stricken. So the idea of how much better the next life is going to be is literally laid out here by Christ when he says, "In my Father's house are many mansions. If it were not so, I would have told you." Now look at what he says next. "I go to prepare a place for you." I go to prepare a place for you. Now, we all like to sing about just build my mansion next door to Jesus. That's not what he said. He said, "I go to prepare a place for you." Now, any place that Christ prepares for us is going to be a mansion. It's going to be glorious. But I want to give you the Hebrew rationale here. When a son decided to take a wife, he would start to build a place for him and his wife. You know where that place was? It was an extension of his father's house. He would barter. He would try to talk to his family. He would try to come up with the money to buy probably the property next door to his father's house, and he would begin an extension of his father's house, a place on the end of the house. Now, granted, it's going to be as nice as his father's house because his father's going to help him build it. And he goes to prepare a place for his bride. Jesus is giving that same analogy. He's saying, there is no place for you, but I go to prepare a place for you. Why? Because you're going to be bought by the blood of my own body. You are going to be bought with a price. You're not going to be your own. You're going to belong to me. You are going to be, the church is going to be the bride of Christ. And he is going to prepare a place for us. Will it be a mansion? It will be magnificent. Will it be the greatest thing you've ever seen? More than likely. The Bible says, "Eye has not seen, ear has not heard, neither has it entered into the heart of man, the things that God has in store for those who love him." So many times we forget that the afterlife is so much greater than what we can ever accomplish here. The Trump Towers and the golf courses and the beautiful mansions that our former president has pale in comparison to what God has in store for us. And he is gone to prepare a place for us. He goes on to say, so that where I am, there you may be also. We'll talk about that tomorrow. I love you. I'm praying for you. Get into this 14th chapter. Read, follow along with us. I'll see you again tomorrow. God bless you as always, is my prayer.